One more call before we're out of time. No better way to wrap up a Come Out With It Friday than with a call from our buddy Brad Cabana. Hello, Brad. You're on the air.
Hey, Patty. How are you?
I'm best guy, man. How about you?
Hello, Tim.
Brad, how are you? Never actually talked to you. We've talked on internet before. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. I was calling about Muskrat Falls, actually, and a sort of question was for Tim, actually. With your experience, on the national scene and with the federal-provincial relations and the financing thereof. And my question to you is that if the federal government provides a loan guarantee for Newfoundland Labrador's operations for the Muskrat Falls, does that set a precedent that Hydro-Quebec can then go back to the federal government and say, look, you gave a loan guarantee to Newfoundland and Labrador. We want a loan guarantee for our operations currently building on the Romaine, and knowing Quebec probably even trying to get a retroactive.
Well, let me answer that by looking at the actual example of what happened, because it's a good question. You'll know from your time here in Newfoundland and Labrador a lot about the history of Hibernia. And Hibernia, it could be argued, was a precedent-setting action whereby the Government of Canada, when one of the partners at the time in the early 90s left the deal, came in and became an 8.5% shareholder in the Hibernia project. And as a consequence of that, the project has taken off. Newfoundland and Labrador has flourished. Canada now has, as you know, Brad, and I think the listeners know, the Canada Hibernia Holding Corporation, which sucks in millions upon millions of dollars a year that they aren't seemingly willing to give up, even though the Newfoundland government has approached them. So that was a unique case that didn't set a precedent. I think the federal government looks at cases like Hibernia, like Lower Churchill, like the Northern Gateway, like the Lloydminster upgrader in your neck of the woods, and decides how best to make investments. I don't think it's precedential. I think what it says is the federal government, or any government, and all of those governments have been different governments, will look to do what they can to help a region when they can with the investment that they can make. I mean, Quebec may have different things it wants to ask for. You'll know from your read of things that Charest right now, though in trouble politically, is pushing the Plan Nord, which is about developing a lot of the energy sources in northern Quebec. And he has not asked for anything similar at all, as far as I can tell, to what is being sought by the four Atlantic provinces. Because the other point, and I close on this to let you reply, the loan guarantee may be going to the proponents of the project, which in this case would be Emera and Nalcor and their respective governments, but it's the four Atlantic provinces, and this is what appealed to the federal government, that are supporting the loan guarantee.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess, dealing with federal-provincial relations and knowing the way Quebec operates, I can't help but think that in one way Newfoundland and Labrador is actually shooting itself in the foot, because even though in the short term it gives some stability to borrowing, or a rate decrease potentially for borrowing on the long term, on the flip side of that, it could also reinforce Hydro-Quebec's position relative to Newfoundland and Labrador. In other words, we could be making our enemy, or some people view as our enemy, much stronger by getting a little short-term break ourselves.
Or as the original logic was. I mean, I think it's a fair point you raise, and I'm glad, and I thank you for being respectful in this exchange, nicer than some of the ones we've had earlier in the week. But I think the other side of this, and this is one of the arguments that then Premier Williams made, and it's an argument I support. No, everybody knows I'm pro-Muskrat, is it creates another option for us too, not just with Quebec, but everywhere else, if we create a second route of transmission that isn't beholden to the 2041 contract. So I hope in the next number of months, as they go back into the House, all of these things get discussed and looked at. But to your principal question, I think Canada is of the view that this is distinct and unique and supports it because it is so strongly regionally supported by the four Atlantic provinces.
Okay, well, I guess time will tell. I mean, I've never known Quebec not to try and grab its bit, based on precedent, and especially with something as big as hydro. But I guess time will tell.
It will, and if they're not shy of grabbing their bit or their bits if they don't get their way. Brad, it's always good to have you on. I enjoyed that exchange myself. You're welcome to call again at your leisure, as you know. Thanks. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks, Betty. Have a good weekend.
You too, man. Bye-bye.
You guys.